Have you ever noticed how you tend to trip right before the finish line? How the moment things start to look good, a strange unease creeps in like peace itself feels suspicious. You tell yourself you're just being cautious, that it's better not to get too comfortable. But beneath that logic lies something far older, quieter, and crueler, the part of you that doesn't trust happiness to stay. You say you want success, love, or healing, yet some invisible force within keeps pulling the plug just when the light begins to warm you. That force has a name. It's the ghost of your own survival instinct, self-sabotage, wearing the mask of protection. Imagine a child learning to walk in a room full of glass. Every step forward cuts, every stumble hurts. Eventually, the child learns to move carefully, not to avoid pain, but to avoid hope. Because hope always seems to end in disappointment. Years later, that same child grows into you. You no longer remember the glass, but you still flinch before joy. You make yourself small in conversations, delay the project that could change your life, or push away the person who finally sees you, and you call it bad luck, or timing, or not being ready. But the truth is simpler, and sadder, you've mistaken safety for suffering. Psychologists call this the familiarity principle. The brain, driven by its primitive wiring, confuses comfort with what's known, not what's good. If pain was your first language, peace feels foreign. Neuroscience shows that the amygdala, the brain's fear center, reacts not only to danger, but to unpredictability. So even love, if it's stable and kind, can trigger panic in a heart raised on chaos. The body remembers what the mind has forgotten. The calm you crave feels like silence. After years of alarms, beautiful but unbearable. And so, you sabotage. Not because you're broken, but because you're loyal. Loyal to the pain that once kept you alive. You ghost the job interview that scared you, ruin the relationship that challenged your old story, reject the compliment that didn't match your low self-image. It's not stupidity, it's muscle memory. Your nervous system whispers, don't trust what feels too easy. But what if survival isn't the goal anymore? What if the part of you still fighting to stay safe is the same part keeping you from being free? Somewhere between who you were and who you're becoming lies a fragile truce between fear and possibility. And that's where this war truly begins. Not outside, but within. Because every time you run from peace, you're not avoiding danger, you're avoiding the life that's finally ready to begin. Do you remember the first time peace made you nervous? You were too young to name it then, that quiet before the shouting, that calm before the door slammed. You learned early that silence wasn't safety, it was suspense. The child you once were didn't grow up in chaos by choice. Chaos grew around them, like ivy on the walls of their nervous system. Love came and went like weather, warm one day, cold the next. You learned to read faces like maps, searching for signs of the next storm. And when the storm didn't come, you almost missed it, because peace, to you, began to feel wrong. Picture that child at the dinner table. The air feels heavy, though no one says a word. A dropped fork, a sigh, a look, the temperature of the room changes. The child's body tenses before the mind even understands why. This is how the body keeps score. Years later, scientists would call it emotional conditioning. But to that small, frightened heart, it was simply life. The amygdala, the brain's alarm bell, learned to predict pain, even in stillness. So calm began to mean danger. Safety became something you didn't trust. When love was conditional, you learned to earn it. When approval was fleeting, you learned to chase it. You performed, apologized, overachieved anything to keep the fragile world from collapsing again. But no one told you that a nervous system raised on tension doesn't know how to rest. You carried that lesson into adulthood, like an invisible inheritance. Even when you left the house that taught it, it never really left you. Attachment theory calls this anxious conditioning, the pattern where love is both the cure and the poison. You crave closeness, but fear what follows it. So, in your adult life, when someone offers consistency, you flinch. When success arrives, you doubt it. You find ways to make the calm chaotic again because at least chaos feels familiar. It's what your body knows how to survive. You see, self-sabotage doesn't begin as rebellion, it begins as protection. It's the child inside you still scanning the room, still holding their breath after every moment of peace. They're terrified that comfort means danger, that safety is just the pause before the fall. So they pull the plug first on relationships, opportunities, even happiness, to feel in control of the ending. The tragedy is that the threat was real once, but now the war has ended and you're still ducking for cover. The home that taught you to fear calm is long gone. Yet, every time peace finds you, that child inside whispers, "Don't trust it." And so, the child grows up, but the fear never does. You've become an expert at pretending you're fine. To the world, you look composed, someone who has it all under control. The career, the relationship, the confidence. But beneath the surface, there's a quiet tremor, a constant hum of unease that no achievement seems to silence. You smile through it, play the role, keep moving, because slowing down would mean hearing the noise inside. You wear the mask so well, even you've started to believe it. Yet, every time life starts to feel too peaceful, too safe, something in you itches to disrupt it, a subtle urge to pick at the stitches of your own stability. You say it's just stress, bad timing, or bad luck, but the truth runs deeper. The child who once feared safety is still inside you, whispering that calm cannot be trusted. So, you find small ways to recreate the tension that feels familiar. You procrastinate right before a breakthrough. You withdraw just when someone gets close enough to care. You pick fights with those who love you, not out of cruelty, but control, because pain you cause feels safer than pain that catches you off guard. It's not rebellion, it's ritual. You're building and breaking the same walls, just to prove to yourself you're still the one holding the hammer. Psychologists call it self-confirmation bias, the unconscious drive to recreate what feels familiar, even when it hurts. The nervous system, trained by chaos, searches for the rhythm of instability. You mistake anxiety for motivation, exhaustion for purpose, and loneliness for independence. Your mask becomes both armor and prison, protecting you from rejection while keeping love out. Neuroscience tells us the brain's reward system lights up not just for pleasure, but for predictability. So even pain, when familiar, can feel like home. You've learned to smile during collapse, to hold yourself together with invisible thread. But behind that perfect composure lives exhaustion, the weight of performing sanity in a world that applauds your disguise. You call it resilience, you call it self-reliance, but it's really fear. Fear of being seen without the costume, of being loved without the effort. Because if people saw the chaos beneath your calm, they might leave. And somewhere deep down, you still believe that being abandoned for who you truly are would hurt more than being applauded for who you pretend to be. The tragedy is not that you fail, it's that you sabotage every chance to rest in peace you've already earned. You call it failure, but it's really nostalgia, your mind, missing the chaos that once made you feel alive. And until you understand that your mask was never meant to protect you from the world, but from yourself, you'll keep wearing it even when it suffocates you. Have you ever wondered why you keep walking back into the same kind of pain, different faces, same story? Why you crave change but feel paralyzed the moment it begins? It's not weakness, it's wiring. Your brain isn't designed to chase happiness, it's designed to predict safety. And for many people, safety and suffering became the same thing a long time ago. In neuroscience, there's a concept called predictive coding, the brain's obsession with the familiar. Rather than seeking truth, it seeks patterns. It builds a model of the world based on what it's already seen and filters every new experience through that lens. So, if you grew up where love came with punishment, your brain learned that love hurts. If calm moments always ended in chaos, it learned that peace is the warning before the storm. Over time, your nervous system begins to crave the pain it understands more than the safety it doesn't. It's not a conscious choice, it's a reflex, a survival map drawn in childhood and followed unconsciously through adulthood. Psychologists see this as the foundation of attachment theory. The way your caregivers responded to your emotions became the blueprint for how you now attach to others and to yourself. Those who were comforted learned to trust calm. Those who were ignored or shamed learned to fear it. When that child grows into an adult, the brain's amygdala, its fear center, stays on guard, misinterpreting safety as danger. It's why you overthink every good moment, waiting for the collapse. Why you push people away the second they get too close. Why peace feels like drowning when all you've ever known is treading water. Even the brain's reward system gets tangled in this paradox. Dopamine, the chemical of motivation, spikes not just with pleasure, but with anticipation, especially of tension, of uncertainty. That's why you might feel more alive during the chaos of a fight than in the stillness after. It's why so many sabotage beginnings, the unknown peace of a new path, feels more terrifying than the familiar hell you've mastered. This is what trauma does. It teaches your body to mistake survival for living. And when the conflict between who you are and who you were becomes unbearable, you rationalize the sabotage. You call it instinct, timing, intuition, when in truth, it's conditioning. This is what psychologists like Martin Seligman once described as learned helplessness. The moment the mind stops believing it can escape its own pattern, even when the door is wide open. So ask yourself, if your mind was trained to survive danger, how can it ever learn to live in peace? The answer lies not in fighting your wiring, but in teaching it safety, again not by force, but by familiarity. Because the same brain that learned to fear calm can learn to trust it too. Why does part of you find comfort in the very pain you claim to hate? Why does destruction feel, in some twisted way, like home? You tell yourself you're tired of hurting, tired of repeating the same cycles, yet when peace arrives, something inside recoils. You start overthinking, pushing people away, lighting old fires just to feel the heat again. It's not logic, it's instinct. There's a quiet seduction in ruin, a dark familiarity that whispers, at least you know how this ends. Carl Jung once wrote that the shadow, the hidden, wounded side of you doesn't just hold your darkness, it also protects it. It clings to pain because pain is predictable. It's the one constant that never leaves, the one feeling you've mastered. And so, without realizing it, you become loyal to your suffering. You call it fate or bad habits, but it's really attachment to the chaos that shaped you. Healing, though beautiful, feels like betrayal. To let go of your wounds would mean letting go of the version of you that survived them, and that feels like death. The strange thing about self-destruction is that it often begins with control. You break things before they can break you. You leave before you're left. You ruin moments of happiness because you don't trust them to last. Psychologists call this anticipatory defense, the brain's attempt to minimize loss by causing it first. It's why you might provoke an argument just to confirm your fear of rejection, or quit something promising, so failure feels like choice instead of punishment. It's not madness. It's mastery, the illusion of control over the inevitable. There's also dopamine in the damage, a chemical high that comes from chaos. Neuroscience shows that the brain rewards any strong emotional spike, even negative ones. So, when you spiral, when you destroy what's good, the mind releases the same neurotransmitters that once helped you survive danger. It feels intoxicating, familiar, alive. You confuse the adrenaline of destruction with proof of existence. Because after years of pain, calm can feel like erasure. The stillness of healing feels like emptiness. And yet, in quiet moments, you feel the war between the two selves, the one desperate to rebuild, and the one terrified of who you'll become without the wreckage. You try to heal, but healing threatens the identity you built from your scars. You wear pain like armor, unaware it's also your cage. The truth is, you don't sabotage because you love destruction. You sabotage because you fear disappearance. You've mistaken survival for self. You've confused chaos with character. And so, when peace knocks, you hesitate because the person who opens that door won't be the same one who lived through the fire. But maybe that's the point, because every ending the shadow fears is just the beginning of your becoming. Have you ever noticed how the world praises you most when you're slowly destroying yourself? They call you selfless when you abandon your own needs, driven when you forget to rest, strong when you never cry. Somewhere along the way, pain became a badge of honor. You learned to measure your worth by how much you could endure. And the cruelest part is society applauds it. They hand you gold medals for self-neglect and call it goodness. But goodness, as you were taught, was never about truth. It was about compliance. From childhood, you were told that being a good person meant being agreeable, helpful, forgiving, even when it hurt. You were taught that love was something you earned through sacrifice. So you learned to smile while bleeding, to say, "It's fine," when it wasn't, to give more when you were already empty. Every time you put yourself last, someone called you kind. Every time you swallowed your truth, someone called you mature. What no one told you was that goodness built on self-erasure isn't goodness. It's quiet self-destruction dressed as virtue. Psychologists call this toxic altruism, when the need to be liked or needed overrides the need to be whole. Studies on social approval show that the human brain releases dopamine when praised for empathy or sacrifice. That chemical reward keeps you chasing validation through suffering. It's a loop. The more you neglect yourself, the more you're celebrated for it. It's why burnout feels like purpose and boundaries feel like guilt. You've been conditioned to equate exhaustion with excellence. And the world doesn't just permit it, it depends on it. Workplaces worship the sleepless, relationships reward the selfless, and culture romanticizes the broken. Movies, religion, and social media repeat the same story. The purest souls are the ones who give until nothing remains. But here's the truth, the system never admits a mastodon. A person who burns for everyone else eventually turns to smoke. And society loves smoke because it's beautiful, temporary, and silent. You begin to realize that the label of good person was never meant to free you. It was meant to control you, to keep you obedient, agreeable, manageable. Every yes that went against your instincts was a small betrayal disguised as grace. And with every act of unnecessary giving, you lost a little more of the self you were supposed to protect. It's not that kindness is wrong. It's that you were never taught where to aim it. True goodness isn't setting yourself on fire to keep others warm. It's learning that warmth means nothing if it costs you your soul. Because the world, as it stands, teaches you to burn beautifully and then applauds the ashes. There comes a point when the chaos you once used to survive begins to suffocate you. The same patterns that once protected you now pull you under, like waves that no longer care if you make it back to shore. You start to see it, the trail of half-finished dreams, broken promises, and relationships that collapsed not because they were wrong, but because they were real. You tell yourself you're just unlucky, that timing was bad, that people changed. But deep down, you know the truth. You were the one who ran first. You were the one who struck the match every time peace began to settle in. There's a loneliness that comes from betraying yourself repeatedly. It's not loud or dramatic. It's the quiet ache that fills the spaces between achievements. You get what you wanted, the job, the relationship, the validation, but instead of joy, there's only tension. The mind begins its ritual of sabotage, whispering, "You don't deserve this." and soon you prove yourself right. You withdraw, delay, destroy, not because you want to fail, but because failure feels familiar. Success, in contrast, feels foreign and therefore unsafe. Neuroscience calls this emotional incongruence, when your inner world rejects what your outer world finally provides. The nervous system clings to the discomfort it understands, confusing familiarity with safety. It's a strange kind of exhaustion, the fatigue of living a double life. The mask smiles, but the eyes look distant. You give advice you can't take, preach healing you can't feel. You become fluent in pretending. And every relapse, every emotional collapse, deepens the belief that you're broken beyond repair. Psychologists describe this as learned helplessness, the quiet surrender that forms when pain feels permanent and change feels futile. The more you fall, the more you expect to. And soon, sabotage becomes not just habit, but identity. You start to see the cost, not in money or moments, but in self-trust. Every time you promise to do better and don't, something inside you dies a little. You no longer believe your own apologies. You begin to fear your own potential because you've only ever seen it turn to ruin. That fear hardens into shame, and shame grows heavy. It's the kind of weight you can't see, but always carry in your shoulders, your breath, your silence. And yet, even here, in this darkness, there's truth. Pain repeats itself not to punish you, but to be recognized. The cycle continues because the child within you still believes chaos is safety. But every pattern can be broken if you dare to meet the part of you that created it. There comes a moment when you finally get tired of running not from others, but from yourself. The chaos that once felt like oxygen begins to taste stale. You start to wonder if there's another way to exist. One that doesn't depend on crisis. One that doesn't demand collapse to feel alive. And it begins not with a grand act of change, but with a quiet decision to stay. To stay when the silence feels too heavy. To stay when calm feels suspicious. To stay when the old urge to destroy begins to whisper again. Healing doesn't arrive like a thunderstorm. It seeps in like dawn, slow, soft, almost invisible. Neuroscience calls it neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to rewrite itself through repetition. Every time you choose awareness instead of avoidance, every time you breathe through discomfort instead of fleeing from it, your mind begins to redraw its internal map. You're teaching your nervous system a new language, one where peace isn't danger and safety isn't a trap. This is how you begin to reprogram the self, not through willpower, but through gentle consistency. You might find yourself sitting at a desk with a journal, trying to write what you feel but not knowing where to start. You might pause before sending a message, realizing you don't need to chase clarity that someone else refuses to give. Or maybe you'll finally let yourself cry not because you're weak, but because your body has been waiting years to exhale. These small, unremarkable moments are the revolutions no one sees. Psychology calls this self-trust restoration, the process of proving to yourself through action that you are no longer the enemy. As you begin to reparent the parts of you that were once neglected, you learn that discipline isn't punishment, it's protection. That boundaries aren't walls, they're doors you choose when to open. Your nervous system, once addicted to survival, slowly learns to recognize stillness as safe. You'll relapse, you'll fall back into old habits. But each time you return to awareness, the pattern weakens. You realize that healing isn't linear. It's circular, like a spiral staircase that always brings you a little higher, even when it feels like you're walking in circles. One day, you'll notice that the silence no longer scares you. That calm no longer feels like waiting for disaster. And you'll understand something sacred. The monster you've been running from was never trying to kill you. It was only trying to keep you alive. Healing begins the moment you stop running from the quiet. Because in that quiet, you finally hear the voice you've been missing your own. There comes a day when you finally stop asking, "What's wrong with me?" and start whispering, "What happened to me?" It's a subtle shift, but it changes everything. You begin to see that your destruction was never senseless. It was sacred. Every collapse had meaning. Every broken piece was a breadcrumb, leading you back to the place you abandoned long ago yourself. For years, you mistook survival for failure, chaos for weakness. But the truth is simpler and far more human. You were never trying to ruin your life. You were trying to feel safe in a world that taught you fear was the only kind of safety that lasted. When you look in the mirror now, you might still see the ruins, the relationships lost, the dreams delayed, the versions of you that didn't make it. But if you look closer, you'll notice something else: growth pushing through the cracks. Like green shoots breaking through blackened soil, life returns to even the most burned landscapes. Psychology calls it post-traumatic growth, the mind's miraculous ability to find meaning in pain, to rebuild identity from ashes. Your brain, once wired for threat, begins to rewire itself for peace. What once felt like chaos starts to look like a pattern. What once felt like punishment begins to resemble a lesson. There's an old myth about the phoenix, the bird that dies in fire only to rise from it, brighter and more powerful. But what most people forget is that the phoenix doesn't fear the flame. It walks into it willingly, knowing that death is not an ending but a cleansing. You've been doing the same without realizing it. Every time you faced your fear instead of fleeing, every time you chose awareness over avoidance, you were stepping into your own fire. The pain that once consumed you was burning away everything that wasn't real, the masks, the lies, the versions of you that were never yours to carry. Neuroscience tells us that new neural pathways form only through discomfort, that the brain literally rewires itself by enduring what feels unbearable. So when you sit in your silence, when you refuse to repeat what once destroyed you, your mind learns a new truth: that peace is survivable. And in that moment, the fire stops being punishment. It becomes purification. One day, you'll look in the mirror and realize the reflection staring back isn't someone ruined by their past. It's someone reborn because of it. You'll see the ashes on your hands, the smoke in your lungs, and you'll understand they were never symbols of failure. They were proof of your becoming. You are not broken for ruining good things. You are healing for finally noticing that you did.